Unit 10. The Making of Genius.
Hello, everyone. Today we'll begin our next unit, and the topic is one that I think you'll find interesting. One of the most noteworthy aspects of human beings is our remarkable ability to learn a wide variety of skills, and to learn some skills very well. I'm sure you'll agree that great athletes, musicians, and singers are often the objects of our respect and admiration. And one reason for this is that many of us believe these individuals are special. That is, we believe that they have special talents provided by their DNA. They are gifted. But do you think it is really true? Could you or I become another Mozart, another Einstein, or another Van Gogh? Today, we'll look at this question by discussing expert performance. That is, performances that are at a world-class level. First, I'd like to focus on the importance of practice and some reasons why many scientists doubt that innate talent is particularly important in skill development. Second, we'll look at the contribution which innate talent might make. And finally, I'll try to tie these two ideas together by proposing that it's the interaction of practice and talent that produces great musicians, scientists, and so on. Okay, so let's begin with the notion of practice. First of all, let's consider the fact that there have been historical increases in performance in many areas, particularly in the past 100 to 200 years. For instance, Olympic records in many sports have been broken repeatedly, even in sports that have had few changes in equipment, such as running sports. How can we account for this? Well, if innate talent were a strongly limiting factor, we wouldn't expect such rapid improvements in world record performances, unless you happen to believe that innate talent has increased in the past century. Of course, no one believes this to be the case. Instead, we believe that external factors, such as better training methods and better diets, have had an enormous effect. Now, this phenomenon isn't just limited to athletics. We can find the same situation in the world of music. There are pieces of music that used to be thought of as being virtually unplayable. For instance, in the 19th century, some people thought that the violinist Niccolò Paganini had magical powers because of the difficult techniques he had mastered. However, today many of his pieces are regularly played by adult and even by outstanding child musicians. So once again, the general conclusion is that innate talent hasn't limited human performance to this point in history. If that's right, then it's reasonable to expect that better practice and training will allow skill levels to continue to rise. Yes? Do you have a question?
I have a comment. What you're saying makes sense to me because every year new world records are broken. I don't think we really know what our limitations are.
I agree. We're getting closer to human limitations every time a new world record is set. But you're right, we're not there yet. Now, another reason to believe that practice is extremely important is because general intelligence and memory abilities and specific abilities are not strongly related. I see a question.
Sorry to interrupt again, but I'm not sure what you mean by not strongly related.
Okay, here's an example. World chess masters are intelligent, but they're not any more intelligent than many people who can't play chess at all. When world-class chess players have been tested for general memory skills, their memories are no better than many non-experts. But when they're tested for their memory of board positions in chess, they have an extremely well-developed memory of chessboard positions that they've seen in the past. This allows them to make decisions more rapidly and accurately than ordinary people.
Okay, so experts have a kind of specialized type of knowledge or a specialized memory.
Well, specialized knowledge. In the case of chess, a major part of that specialized knowledge is their specialized memory for chessboard positions. Okay? And it all comes from enormous amounts of practice and experience in their area. Now, a third point is that success is based on a variety of motivational, personality, and social factors. Important personality factors are, perseverance, or you might say patience in the face of failure, the ability to concentrate for long periods of time, self-confidence, optimism, competitiveness, a high energy level, and the ability to control anxiety. Now, related to this is the idea of social support. Remember that I just mentioned the ability to concentrate for long periods of time. Well, research has shown that very few people have the ability to practice intensely for long periods of time when they have no social support. An example might help here. We know that sustained support from an adult is needed for young musicians to become successful. Because without a lot of support and encouragement, young people won't do the long hours of practice necessary to excel. In other words, parental support seems to come first. And this is followed by intense practice, which then sometimes results in great skill development. Now, I've mentioned that in order to become an exceptional performer in a complex skill like playing the violin, a person has to work hard for a long period of time. Now, what do you think I might mean by that? Is a long period of time 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? What do you think? Yes, Greg.
Well, I would say a lot longer than 5 years. I've read about the lives of several famous musicians and athletes and writers, and I don't know, they have to practice maybe 8 or 10 years or so.
10 years is the answer. The truth is that even the most talented people need to begin to study or practice before the age of 6, and then put in more than 10 years of intensive, high-quality practice. Let's look at the classic example of a genius, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Behind the original creative music that he wrote was years of hard work. Mozart practiced intensely. He wrote his first 7 works for the piano and orchestra when he was between the ages of 11 and 16. Now that's impressive. But they were actually arrangements of works by other composers, so his early works were a kind of practice, not creative or original. Mozart didn't produce an original masterpiece for piano and orchestra until he was 21. But think about that. By the time he was 21, he had been playing music for 16 years and had been writing music for piano and orchestra for 10 years. So even in Mozart's case, a long period of practice preceded his works of creative genius. All right. So far I've suggested that 3 things are necessary to become great: practice, strong personal characteristics such as self-confidence, and strong social support. But let's consider another factor: innate talent. This is the idea that our genetic qualities are important, that we inherit talent from our parents. Right away, I'd like to point out that the effects of innate talent are extremely difficult to measure and separate from environmental factors. Even in cases in which young children are very skilled, it's not clear that innate talent is the main cause because researchers have almost always discovered that the child's parents had created a powerful supportive environment for the child from infancy. So social support and encouragement probably played important roles. Now, something that may surprise you is that most people who become highly skilled as adults don't show signs of greatness when they're young children. In one study, a researcher looked at 21 Americans who were beginning careers as concert pianists. Generally, the signs of special skill followed a combination of good opportunities and strong encouragement from parents and teachers. Signs of greatness couldn't be seen until they had practiced intensely for at least 6 years. The same results were found for professional tennis players in Germany, and that's a country that has produced top players, such as Steffi Graf. Signs of innate talent usually only come out after long-term parental encouragement and a considerable amount of training. Notwithstanding the difficulties involved with trying to detect innate talent, Many child psychologists believe that some children are born with talent that allows them to learn specific skills very rapidly. An example of a skill that can clearly be inherited is working memory capacity. That is, a person's ability to process and hold information in the memory when solving problems. This type of ability seems to be important in young people who are especially good at mathematics. In addition, some degree of general intelligence, such as the capacity to analyze problems, is clearly inherited. So some aspects of intelligence do seem to be innate. Now, another way in which innate talents may play a role is related to what I said earlier about personality factors, such as self-confidence, persistence, and competitiveness. Many researchers believe that these qualities are at least partially innate. For instance, some children seem to have a natural ability to concentrate intensely for long periods. Others seem to be naturally daring and confident. Some seem to be born with the physical, mental, and emotional energy necessary to achieve greatness. That may be a fundamental part of innate talent. A further point is that most researchers have partly defined innate ability as the ability for someone to perform a skill well before getting the opportunity for much practice. For example, now if you find that a child is good at playing the piano right away without any practice, you might assume that the child has innate skills. However, this may not be the case. What we should perhaps be looking at in young people is not great ability when they begin their training, but rather ease of learning. Ease of learning may be the most important sign that a child is gifted. I'm sure you noticed in school that some children seem to learn to play a sport, play a musical instrument, or do mathematics more easily than others. It seems reasonable that this is a sign of innate talent. Okay, to summarize, what does all this mean? Well, it looks like becoming great at something involves a fairly predictable process. First, the person is born with certain personality characteristics. These characteristics are then probably nurtured by the child's parents. Next, when the child begins to show interest in some area, the parents react supportively. That is, they encourage and perhaps even push the child to work hard and to practice intensively. Then the child goes on to achieve increasingly higher levels of skill. As the child becomes more skilled, he or she becomes more motivated to excel, and parents and teachers provide support. This can result in a long-term commitment to practice. Finally, if the child continues to work hard for around 10 years, he or she will probably become very highly skilled in the area chosen. Now, I'd like to remind you that scientific research rarely allows us to understand how to separate genetic and external factors in human learning. What I'd like to suggest, though, is that these two accounts of skill development are not incompatible. To quote a line on page 343 of your textbook, it's quite likely that the interaction of innate capacities and opportunities for engaging in intense training result in high levels of performance. I think those words sum up the situation quite accurately. In closing, I'd like to ask you a final question. Were the works of Mozart brought into this world only through practice and study? Can anyone make the scientific breakthroughs of Einstein or play basketball like Michael Jordan if they work hard enough? In my opinion, they cannot. Innate talent is also needed, but we just haven't learned how to measure it yet. All right, now I'd like you to get into groups. Look at page 349, and there you'll see...